One of the things that definitely happens with invasives is when you have land disturbance and you have open ground, you do get invasives moving in. They move in easier sometimes than some of the native plants. I mean, you often have a seed bank there, but when you scrape everything else away, you've got invasives take advantage of that as well. So starting right away, we have Multiflora rose, one of the classic invasives that's been listed forever. You can tell Multiflora rose from other roses very easily because it has these hairy parts on the base, little little finger-like pieces on the base. Our native roses do not have that. They'll have the two little parts on the stipule, but they'll be smooth. It also is now getting invaded with something called Rosa rosette virus. And I'm not seeing it here, but I have seen it in other parts of Massachusetts. That's a problem because it's also impacting all the horticultural roses. Because, what do you know? Horticultural roses use Multiflora rose as their rootstock. So you can get this if you cut them back too far. You may get Multiflora rose coming up. So just things to think about.
What was it called? Rosa?
It's Rosa rosette.
Okay.
It's a virus.
And what about like the Virginia rose and the pasture rose?
They're not getting hit by it.
Are not affected.
Moving on to plant number 2, another really common one. We've got, this is in a class of bush honeysuckles. This particular one is Moros, and it's a little bit furry, a little bit fuzzy. All of these bush honeysuckles that are about this size are all non-natives. We have native honeysuckles as well that are bushes, but they don't get big. They tend to stay smaller as well. So these guys tend to be, if you get them when they're small, any of us could pull them out. They root fairly shallowly. They keep their roots near the surface. So, I mean, these will have white flowers or pinkish flowers that are really open. They have their face open, and these guys, whereas our native ones tend to be almost bell-shaped and drooping down. This one is autumn olive. And if you were with me last night, this is the one that is a nitrogen fixer, so it can grow in very poor soil. If you look at it, it will be at the leaves. They're somewhat reflective on the back. This actually produces a fruit that the birds love to eat, but it's also edible by people. There's some people who will make jam out of the fruits of this.
It's good.
It's good. The birds will eat it. It's got the very almost overpowering sweet smell when it blooms in the spring. It is poison ivy growing up the tree. So if you do not know poison ivy, you can see it right here. That is a native species. There are a number of animals and wildlife that do rely on poison ivy. So if it's not bothering you, I suggest you leave it. But if it's in your way where you're going to walk, you might want to get rid of it very carefully. Asian bittersweet will climb up the trees and will actually be strong enough to pull them down. So something like that, if you were going to try and control, what you would want to do is cut it off, probably close to the ground, and then cut off the trunk as it's going up so you've got a good gap between them, and just leave it in the tree. Don't worry about getting it out. As it dies, it'll come down on its own and it'll just fall apart. But then you want to watch at the base so that you can continue to trim off anything else. This is a viburnum. It might be.
Oh, not all of them are?
Not all of them are. There have been ones that have been introduced. And at this stage in its development, I can't say for sure that it is one of the natives. It could be one of the introduced ones.
But it's not invasive, even if it is, or
it could be. The wood aster, that's as tall as it'll get. Yeah. It'll cover a whole area though, and you've got a nice open ground for it, so it's happy here. And here we have a pyrola. Yep. This is another native, a very pretty little plant. We have a number of goldenrods along here, and these are natives, and they're really important in the fall for the bees. That is mugwort. This is the remnants, is the green, the gray and brown, and here is all the new stuff coming in. It is horribly invasive. We have not been able to get it listed yet. So this is Japanese knotweed. This is it just coming up. This is the first spring. So this is tansy. It's not on the prohibited plant list, but yes, it's invasive. It was brought over by the settlers, and they used it they would plant it outside their houses to keep the ants out of their house. To make things very confusing, we also have the spotted knapweed right here, which is also pinnate the way that tansy is.
What does pinnate mean?
It has a central stem, and the leaflets come off of that central stem. So each of these is a leaf. This is on the invasive plant list and is prohibited from being sold. Yeah, this is the alder that I was saying was getting listed. And if you look, you can see how the tips of the leaves are indented or rounded here. The more developed ones are actually somewhat indented. We've got a couple classic species right here that are native. We've got the red maples with opposite branching here, and really their buds are red, their twigs are red. When they have flowers out, they're red, but classic growing in this kind of situation where you've got wet soil. And we also have a sweet pepper bush growing right here, the remnants of it, the flowers from last year. And obviously this has not yet started to leaf out. So you've got some fetterbush there, which is another nice native that you would find in a wetland area here. These are going to be the flowering stems. It has beautiful flowers. There is a lot of blueberry, another good native growing in this area. So this is one of the willows you can really see the indentation, the linear indentations that are sticking out. That's a real classic gray willow characteristic. But if you look, you can see it on all of these. Yeah. And it's growing like a tree. So here we have another native. This is elderberry, just starting to come out. Good native. So for people that are interested in seeing the Aurelia, the trunk actually has little fine thorns coming out of it. Non-native, invasive. Fortunately, you don't have lots of it here yet, but it's something to pay attention to. You don't want that. This is the bittercress here, and there is an awful lot of this.